Jai Bhim, Jai Mulnavasi. Welcome to MNT News Network. And today is Sunday, and today is special discussions we have. And every Sunday we are discussing in English, and we have invited Dr. Ayaz Ahmad ji. Dr. Ayaz Ahmad, sir, is a Fulbright visiting scholar at Philosophy Department, Columbia University, New York. Sir, welcome, Dr. Ayaz Ahmad, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, sir. How are you doing?
Sir, fine. Thank you for coming to our MNT News Network, sir. So we are so happy to see you and discuss you about this very important topic. And every Sunday we are discussing our MNT Network is discussing on various topics. And today we are going to discuss on a special topic. The topic is a representative judiciary is must for representative democracy. On this subject, we would like to invite you, sir, and we would like to know your valuable opinion and how much it is useful in particularly in India. Now you are working working as a Fulbright visiting scholar at Philosophy Department, Columbia University. Baba Saheb Dr. Ambedkar studied there, and you are also doing some research job there in Columbia University. Sir, what is the opportunity that is having there in Columbia University? How Baba Saheb Ambedkar shaped his vision in Columbia University, and what are the opportunities there? Please explain in brief, sir.
Thank you for having me. First of all, I'm here only because of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. That is the only reason why I'm here. If not for the guidance and light shown by Baba Saheb Ambedkar's life and work, I would not have been here at Columbia University. I would not have managed to do whatever I'm trying. So, first of all gratitude to Baba Saheb Ambedkar for writing and for doing what he did, and for writing for he wrote for the generations to come, so that people across the world can get inspired by his life and work, especially his work on democracy. That remains extraordinary. It was so much ahead of its time when he completed and he commented and worked on democratic ideals, that democratic thoughts and democratic theory across the world was behind it. So I'm really honored, I'm really privileged to be at a place where Baba Saheb had learned and perfected his skills, honed his skills, and later on worked for the welfare of masses in India, and also gave new direction to democracy. In terms of opportunities, Columbia University is a multidisciplinary university, so all kinds of programs, all kinds of courses are available here, and it is also one of the most dynamic universities in America. This is arguably one of the best as well. So you have philosophy department, especially is the best philosophy department of America here. So I get a lot of learning opportunities here. I get to interact with scholars, thinkers from all over the world. So this is in New York City, which means that it is a global city. People from all over the world come and they pay visit to Columbia University. So I have had great learning experience in last 6-7 months. I hope that my learning here will contribute to the cause of democracy and also to the mission of Baba Saheb Ambedkar in India, especially, and in whatever way that I can contribute, I will be honored and I will feel privileged.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayaz, sir. So particularly, it is in Manhattan. I came to know that Manhattan, New York is a costliest city in USA, and Manhattan is also much more costlier place in New York.
Yeah.
Yet, right, sir?
Yes,
So,
yes, it is one of the
uh,
costly.
so it's we are so happy that Baba Saheb went there to Columbia University and studied his great valuable education there in Columbia University. So the today's topics are you are having vast experience and knowledge on constitutional law. Um, so today's topic is on democracy and judiciary. So a representative judiciary is must for representative democracy. This is the topic, sir. Sir, uh, what is the judicial system that is prevailing in India, and what is your viewpoint, sir?
In short, the kind of system that we have in India, it is a three-tier system. We have subordinate judiciary,
Sir?
which is district level and below, going down to the taluka level, tehsil level, and then we have High Court judiciary in the middle, and then the Supreme Court is at the highest level. That is a three-tier system. In terms of powers, the High Courts and Supreme Court are more or less equivalent in the sense that they are constitutional courts. They have the power to review judicially legislations and executive actions, um, as well as to decide on all the matters of constitution. Supreme Court becomes the apex court because it also has the appellate power over the decisions of the High Court. So that is the system that we have. Um, but the question is the topic that you have suggested for today's discussion, representative democracy. Uh, it involves a lot of questions, understanding about democracy itself. When we say democracy, it is already implied in it that we are talking about system of representation. Without representation, there is no democracy. The difference between monarchy and democracy is that in democracy there is representation. So few questions become important. Representation where? At what places? Where should there be representation? And who should be represented? And who should represent? So two, three questions of representation become very crucial, very important. And we have to reflect on it, that where is the place that we are looking for representation? Who should represent? And whom should the representative represent? These are questions I think that we should discuss when we are talking about representative judiciary.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you, sir. Sir, what is the need of representative judiciary? And the present Supreme Court and High Courts are predominantly dominated by certain elite class, we can say, certain dominated by certain community, particularly Brahmins. So, uh, what is the need of representation, and what is the need of representation of different sectors, particularly the backward Bahujan and Mulivasi Bahujan majority is they are representing nearly 85% of the population of this country. So how to represent in apex courts like High Court and Supreme Court, and what is the procedure prevailing in India, and what is its need?
Yes, sir. Yes. So the most important question, representation. Why should there be representation, right? And that's the departure between democracy and monarchy. The whole idea behind representation in democracy is that wherever there is a space, a place where decisions are taken, which may have an impact on the rights and liberties of the people. Any space, any place, any body, any authority, any organization, any committee where decisions are taken which can have a bearing on the life of the people at large. At those places, representation of the people is must. And that is democracy. If there is democracy, then it means that places where decisions about public law, public policy, and their implementation is taken, those are the places where representation of the people is necessary, right? High courts and Supreme Court being constitutional courts, and under the constitution they have the power to take decisions about public laws and public policies. They review the constitutional validity of public laws and public policies. they also have the power, Supreme Court especially has the final power to interpret the meaning of the provisions of the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
So Supreme Court can decide what is the meaning of its words, its phrases and expressions used in the Constitution. Decision. So High Court is taking decision about laws and public policies and public laws. Supreme Court is taking final decision on them, as well as Supreme Court taking decision, final decision on the meaning of specific provisions of the Constitution. All these decision-making powers of High Court and Supreme Court have extraordinary impact on the lives and liberties of the people. And therefore, High Courts and Supreme Court are spaces where representation is absolutely necessary. If representation is not there of all the sections of the society in High Courts and Supreme Court is not there, then we are positively posing a threat, a danger to democracy. In fact, we are negating democracy completely, because democracy means that a space where decision about public life and liberty, public rights are taken. At those spaces, there should be public representation. If there is no representation, there is no democracy. We have autocracy, we have monocracy, we can have oligarchy, we can have different other forms of government. But if a space where decision about public welfare, public right, public relationship, public organization is taken, laws and policy is taken, if at that space representation of diverse sections of society, every section of the people are not represented, then it is not a democratic space, then we don't have a democracy at all. This is why it is so important to have representation, right?
Thank you, Dr. Ayaz, sir.
Now, the second question, you also asked the second question, how the representation is to be imagined. Now, the second problem arises once we have agreed that without representation, democracy cannot be imagined. Representation is the central pillar of democracy. Then the question is, who should represent whom? Who should represent who? And then here, everything depends on how we understand the nature of the society. If we take the nature of society to be organized around, say, religious differences, or gender differences, or language differences, or caste differences, then we will have a very different understanding of representatives, that who should represent whom, right? If our understanding is like the higher caste, upper caste people want to believe across religions, Avarna and Ashraf and Brahmins, Avarna, Ashraf, they want to believe that the Indian society is divided along religious lines. Then we will only look at High Courts and Supreme Court around religious grounds, and we will see whether different religions are represented or not. So if we look at it from religious point of view, then High Courts and Supreme Court are doing fairly well. You will find that, well, except one will talk about some representation of Sikhs, some Muslims, some probably Christian representation, which needs to increase by few percentages. Otherwise, you have 90% and 95% Hindu representation already in High Court and Supreme Court. So there is no problem. There is already representation. There is representation of the people in High Court and Supreme Court. But if you look at the society, not from the religious lens, so we have to also ascertain what should be the criteria to finding out how the society is organized. To find out what is the criteria, how society is organized, one has to look into the history of the society. How historically society has been constituted. Is it along religious lines? Is it along gender lines? Is it along language lines? Is it along caste lines? Or whether 2 or 3 markers are at play at the same time? Historically, therefore, the criteria to identify what should be the marker of understanding society is that on what basis property, power, and wealth is distributed in the society. What is the basis around which property, wealth, and power is distributed? And then if we look at Indian society, and here we have to talk about the entire Indian subcontinent, not just India, but Pakistan, Bangladesh, everything will come into picture. It is part of one society. We find that it is caste which has been the central feature for organizing property, wealth, as well as power in the Indian subcontinent. which means that it is the information about caste. Which caste do you belong to? Which tells us what is your social status, what is your economic status, what is your property status, what is your wealth status, what is your education status. Right? This is what Baba Sahib Ambedkar, Phule, Ansari, Periyar, what I call Phule, Ambedkar, Ansari, Periyar movement has established over a period of time. This is what Bahujan movement has been trying to establish and has successfully established with the help of data, with the help of social movements, with the help of political movements, intellectual movements, that yes, this is a caste is the basis on which Indian subcontinent society has been organized. Therefore, if representation is to be seen in high courts and Supreme Court, who is represented, who is not represented, then what we have to see is what are the castes which are represented and what are the castes which are not represented. Of course, one cannot deny the role of gender. So accordingly, one will also see what genders are represented and not represented. So two markers will come simultaneously, caste and gender.
Yes.
And some play of religion can also come within it, because religion is also one area, but not the central area, a very marginal area. Language may also come. Indian subcontinent is divided as Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, Marathi, and so 3-4 markers might come. If we look at from these points, then we find that high courts and Supreme Courts are overwhelmingly, disproportionately represented by upper caste, higher caste. The Brahmin, the Banya, two castes are predominant. In terms of religion, you will find if there is going to be diversity, you will find the Sayyids and Pathans in terms of Muslim religion. In terms of Hindu religion, you will only find Brahmins and Brahmanyas and Savarnas. Most of the judges have been male, and a good number of them have been from North India. So there is a great deal of deficit. Scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and other backward classes, cutting across religious background as well as gender, cutting across religion, gender, and language are underrepresented. As we are having this discussion today in 2024. Yes. Today, if we look at the composition of high courts and Supreme Court, we find that scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, other backward caste on the basis of caste. In fact, even in the general caste, so-called high caste and upper caste, there are only 2-3 castes which are represented. There are a wide number of upper caste which are not represented, very poorly represented. But scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, other backward caste, women, and linguistic diversity is very, very, very poor. It is not. It is representing at present. High Court and Supreme Court is representing at best, at the most, some 7-8% population of India. Not more than that. Close to 90% population is not represented in high courts and Supreme Court, which means that high courts and Supreme Court are not democratic spaces. If they are not democratic spaces, then they do not have the right to decide about laws and public policies which can have impact on the 90% of the people who are not represented. Without their representation in High Court and Supreme Court, High Court and Supreme Court lose the legitimacy. They lose their democratic right to pronounce upon laws and public policies which may have a bearing on the 90% population who is not represented at all. Right? This is why we are having this discussion. This is why you have chosen up such a wonderful topic for today's discussion. I think we need to really consider, find out, strategize how we can make sure that SC, ST, OBC representation goes up in high courts and Supreme Court, which cuts across caste as well as gender and language barriers.
Thank you, Dr. Ayaz, sir. A very good analysis you have given to our viewers. And sir, in Supreme Court, there is one system, that is collegium system. So why there is a demand for abolition of collegium system? What is its impact on selecting judges in the apex court? So you please explain, sir, about the major demand that is going in this country about the abolition of collegium system.
All right. Now this is a technical matter. This is about methodology, how to achieve representation,
Sir,
how to appoint judges of High Court and Supreme Court. If we agree on the question on the issue that representation of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, cutting across gender, language, religious barriers must take place in High Court and Supreme Court, then what is the best way to appoint judges so that representation is secured? Now, one demand which has come up from Bahujan groups, organizations, and activists uh, about the abolition of collegium system. And this is the reason why I wrote that paper and article. I think this demand that collegium system should be abolished, this demand on its own is not going to secure representation of SC, ST, and OBC, as well as women and linguistic diversity and religious diversity. It's impossible. There is an assumption that once collegium system is abolished, then automatically the representation of SC, ST, OBC and the women belonging to SC, ST, OBC and different religious group belonging to SC, ST, OBC, as well as the languages, that representation will go up. There is an assumption, but this is only an assumption. There is no constitutional basis to it. Why? Why do I say so? I say so because once collegium system is abolished, what will happen? Will it guarantee a representation? No. What is the mechanism? Mechanism is that we will go back to the previous system. What is the previous system? Previous system is that it is the president in consultation with the judges of High Court and Supreme Court who will appoint. Wherever the president takes the decision, Constitution says under Article 74 that it will be the decision of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, right? So if the decision goes to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, and the Prime Minister and Cabinet is dominated by the same group of upper caste people, who are part of High Court and Supreme Court, who have not allowed representation of SC, ST, OBC till date, how are we going to expect that the representation will go up? In fact, there was a parliamentary committee, Kariya Munda committee, specially appointed to study this matter. What was the representation of SC, ST, OBC before collegium? And what happened to SC, ST, OBC representation after collegium? And the committee, parliamentary committee, Manevar Kashiram was part of that committee, came to the conclusion that there is no difference. Representation of SC, ST, OBC in High Courts and Supreme Court was very poor before collegium, and it remains poor after collegium. Collegium or no collegium, representation will not go up. Therefore, my suggestion in this paper has been that we don't need to approach the issue indirectly, that our demand is abolish the collegium system. No, our demand is not to abolish the collegium. Our demand is increase the representation of SC, ST, and OBC. Whether it is done through collegium, whether it is done through National Judicial Appointment Commission, we are hardly concerned. That is a method of mechanism. If there is a debate about mechanism, we can contribute to that debate. If there is a debate, that debate opens up. At present, that debate is closed. That debate has been closed by the Supreme Court judgment in the 4th judge's case. So because that debate is not open, if that debate is taking place in the parliament, we would like to contribute to it. But because that debate is closed debate, this demand that abolish collegium system is a self-defeating demand. Our energy of Bahujan activists, Bahujan intellectuals, Bahujan organizers is unnecessarily getting wasted in pushing this demand. We don't need to push the demand for the abolition of collegium system. We need to push the demand for representation of SC, ST, and OBC. It can be done through collegium also. If we can put pressure on the collegium through our activities directly, that you are the collegium system, there are only 5 judges. We keep submitting memorandum to them, representations to them, letters to them, protesting in the Supreme Court, around the Supreme, variety of methods. One of the methods that I suggest in the paper is that we also apply pressure through the bar. There are bar in every high court, and there is a bar in the Supreme Court, where SC, ST, OBC, if our claim is that 90% of of the population of India is SC, ST, and OBC, then our numbers in bar is also 90%. It is through bar that we apply pressure. That is much easier to be achieved. If we apply
Yes.
consistent pressure on the collegium that you ensure representation of SC, ST, and OBC, we might get it through collegium itself, right? Or we can get it through parliament, executive, which only passes a simple law that there will be representation of SC, ST, OBC, right? So then we can ensure one. So after our movement has succeeded, we will have the representation. Now the demand is going on in an indirect way, under the assumption that collegium will be abolished and we will have no, it will not happen. It will not happen automatically, for the simple reason because power of appointment is through Article 124 and 217 is with the Supreme Court, and if it is at present, it is with the Supreme Court. Once it is removed, it will go to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. And the Prime Minister and Cabinet, if they are from Bahujan class, they belong to SC, ST, OBC, they are under pressure from SC, ST, OBC group, then they may appoint, they may ensure representation. We know if it was to go to the present government, for example, which is so SC, ST, SC, ST, and OBC, which has done everything, which has given 10% reservation to upper caste people who were already 90% represented everywhere. Do you think that if they had the full power, they would appoint a single SC, ST, OBC? Unless they are fully tamed in their ideology, figurehead representatives might be appointed, but they will not. So the whole demand needs to be reframed, in my opinion. We need to make a direct demand, direct mobilization, which also involves
That is better.
Which also involves increasing our investment in legal education.
Yes.
We train our young minds, sharp, strong minds, brilliant. The best of our Bahujan minds must study law, like Baba Saheb Ambedkar did, and take on in a big way. Join law colleges, universities. We establish our own law colleges and universities. We join existing law college universities. Join the bar. Through bar, we apply pressure. Through the bench, we apply the pressure. From all kinds, from all sides, we apply pressure and try to ensure representation in of SC, ST, OBC in High Courts and Supreme Court. Otherwise, we reject it as non-representative, non-democratic, lock, stock, and barrel. We don't need to mince our words that it is an undemocratic High Courts and Supreme Court that we are facing. It is not a democratic space at all.
Thank you, Dr. Ayaz, sir. Sir, we are frequently hearing various comments while arguments are going on the apex court. So the judges are frequently commenting on different. They are delivering different opinions on reservation, and they are giving confusing judgments, and the judgments are contradictory from one judgment to another judgment. Sir, how to get a fair justice in India, and we are not demanding unfair judgments. We are demanding fair judgments. So how to get a fair judgments from Supreme Court of India, High Courts of India, and how the representative judiciary will deliver better judgments. Then we can say even we can say efficient judiciary particularly belongs to Brahminical or Brahmin Banya community. So what will be the difference? Please explain. And today's topic is for 30 minutes, sir. Already we are reaching 30 minutes. So please explain and conclude on this topic. A representative judiciary is must for representative democracy. Dr. Ayaz, sir.
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, judges of the High Court, because they predominantly come from 2-3 caste groups, they only understand the interests of those 2-3 caste groups. So reservation, which is a means of representation of different social segments of the society, it is for them incomprehensible. Upper caste judges, Brahmin Banya judges, they find it very difficult to understand What is this reservation? They think that it is some kind of a compromise of merit. They cannot understand that it is through representation that merit of the society goes up collectively, the well-being of the country goes up, the quality of efficiency of the entire administration and the entire country goes up. They just can't understand. They are quite used to thinking and believing that only an upper caste person is meritorious person, and only if the Brahmin and Banyas are in the places of administration, then the administration will be good. Although 75 years of democracy and we are still third world country, we have not managed to cross the threshold of becoming a developed country. That is because we have not managed to ensure the representation of majority of the people, SC, ST and OBC, majority of the people at spaces where decision about the welfare of the people are taken. High courts and Supreme Court, especially High Court and Supreme Court, especially High Court and Supreme Court, because High Courts and Supreme Court have, from 1950, I have done number of studies and I have written number of papers. One of the paper is titled Arresting Role of Supreme Court in Arresting Social Democracy. And it is my humble submission that it is the Supreme Court, high caste nature of the Supreme Court, which has arrested social democracy. When social democracy in India is arrested, it is under prison. Majority of the people are not able to get good quality of education, good quality of health, good quality of housing facilities. Then how will India prosper?
Very difficult.
It is the judgments. If you look at the judgments from 1950, variety of judgments, Supreme Court upper caste judges, higher caste judges have been slowing down. They have given judgments which have the effect of excluding SC, ST and OBC from the fruits of democracy. Fruits of democracy are enjoyed only by 10% of the people. This is why the latest Oxfam report, the World Bank report, all kinds of reports tell us that 10% people in India have some 80% property and wealth. How is that possible? Is this democracy? This is aristocracy, a rule of the 10 over the 90, rule of the 10% over the 90%. And this has been facilitated by High Courts and Supreme Court, especially Supreme Court. It is through Supreme Court that this operation has been done over 75 years, that we have democracy only in name. This is what Baba Sahib Ambedkar warned us. That if we do not have social democracy, if we do not have economic democracy, political democracy will be a sham. And this is what we are experiencing now. All these upper caste people now are planning to leave India. You see, most of them are trying to go to Europe, America, give up Indian citizenship. If you look at the list of people who have discarded Indian citizenship, overwhelming majority is upper caste. They have destroyed India and now they are running out of India. How they have destroyed? The way they have destroyed is by denying social democracy, by reducing the representation of SC, ST, OBC in all places where their empowerment could take place. And India could become a strong developed country so that nobody had to move out of India for any purpose. Therefore, High Court, and my submission is through judicial evidence. I have not given my own argument. I have studied judgments of the Supreme Court on media freedom, on reservation, on minority rights, on health parameters, some 5-6 separate papers from judgments from 1950 to 2020. Full spectrum has been studied, and everywhere the evidence is clear. Supreme Court, whenever there is some measure, some decisions, whether it is land distribution, whether it is reservation, whether it is a common education system, Supreme Court will step in and will stop. Judges, because judges simply do not understand. They cannot understand. Judicial theory all over the world has come to the conclusion that representation is must. Without representation of different sections of the society in decision-making spaces, especially judicial ones, decision which can promote the welfare of all the people cannot come. And this is why I think representative judiciary is absolutely necessary for us to have a meaningful democracy, a progressive democracy, a democracy which can elevate India into a first world status country. We will remain otherwise a third world country. We will remain plagued by backwardness. We will remain all kinds of conflicts and unemployment and uh, poor living standards, they will continue to plague our society and our country. It is only through representative judiciary and of course representation at all places where decisions are taken. Higher bureaucracy, for example, chief secretaries, if you look at the wherever there is decision about public policy, laws and their implementation, which will have an impact on public at large, their representation is absolutely necessary. Otherwise we don't have a democracy. It is only a sham of a democracy. It's a show of a democracy. It is uh, uh, cheating, public fraud in the name of democracy which is being committed. I think we have to work it out. We have to ensure that representation in high courts and supreme court takes place as soon as possible, and we have to be very upfront about it, very direct about it. Instead of approaching the issue indirectly, assuming this will happen, no, we directly want representation in SC and OBC in high courts and supreme court, which will of course include women from SC OBC communities, different religious communities within SC OBCs, and language communities as well, region and language as well, and directly mobilize social movement, political movement, wherever there is possibility of legal movement, we take it on, and then we enrich our democracy so that our own lives are also in life of everyone, including upper caste. Including upper caste will benefit immensely if India as a collective whole becomes a better country, better society, more progressive society for everyone. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ayaz, sir. So, in the larger interest of the Indian public, a representative judiciary is must for the betterment of the majority of the people, and it is the sole responsibility of all the intellectual class and all the political parties who are seeking votes from the majority Mulnivasi Bahujans, and that is their moral responsibility to arrange representative judiciary in whatever the form it may be, and they have to see a representative judiciary in the apex courts for the overall development of this country. Thank you, Dr. Ayaz sir, for explaining in detail. Thank you for
Thank you so much. Thank you.
this network, and we'll invite you again and again. And this is a very big subject, and we cannot conclude in a short period. However, you have excellently explained to our viewers. Thank you for coming to MNT News Network. Jai Bhim, Jai Mulnivasi.
Jai Bhim, Jai Bhim.